So Daniel, first, I just kind of wanted you, for people that don't know your story, obviously you were an NFL fan, and just your persistence kind of made you get into the scouting game. So I know you've written a whole book about it. There's multiple interviews about it that people could read up. But if you could just give us kind of like a brief breakdown of how you became a scout and just, that whatever it takes kind of mentality that you've coined, and how it helped you reach your dreams.
Absolutely. It was an incredible journey, Sunil, to say the least.
Uh-huh.
Growing up in Minnesota as a huge fan of the Washington Redskins. I had this tremendous passion for the game, and it kind of worked itself, into me wanting to play, but I never quite got big enough to be a linebacker at Penn State like I wanted to be. So
just a little too small, right?
Just a little too small. Absolutely. I ate all the weight gainer 2200 I could at GNC at the nutrition store, and made large pizza to get my hands on, but I never got big enough to play linebacker. So my parents eventually let me give it a try in high school to play football. And I was so bad at playing that I was the only kid on my team not to have enough playing time to earn a leather jacket.
Wow.
So I want everybody, our listeners, to grab a hold of this, because, I'm not one of these guys that came up with the last name Lombardi or something. That's not my story. I did get the leather jacket, but, I dabbled a little bit in coaching, Sunil, and into our listeners. I went ahead and actually invented a play that I sent to Joe Gibbs, the head coach of the Redskins at the time. And he actually used my play that worked for a touchdown in a preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons when I was 17 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And he actually wrote a response that's in my book, Whatever It Takes. So I do have proof that he used the play. And so I dabbled a little bit in coaching, but really my life changed that year on my 17th birthday when my parents gave me a book, Secrets of NFL Scout, by Tony Brisano, somebody you guys are all near and dear to your hearts, the old scouting director of the 49ers who worked with Bill Walsh, of course, all those years, and was the guy that convinced Bill Walsh to draft some guy named Joe Montana instead of Steve Dills, is who Bill Walsh wanted, as Brisano tells the story in his book.
Wow.
And so, I got this book and I grabbed a hold of it, and I was like, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to be, an NFL scout. And so I read the book backwards and forwards and, see if there's any subliminal messages in it. And then I started recording every game I could off the television, college football games, started writing scouting reports. And Mr. Rosano did such a great job of showing like how to write a report and what a scouting report looks like. He put actual examples of scouting reports in his book. So I was able to draw from that. And because there was nothing back then, Sunil, as far as scouting, there was nothing back then. There was like this little yellow book I used to save up my allowance for, called Jerry Jones Drugstore List, not the Cowboys owner, but another Jerry Jones. And it was like a one-liner on each guy. And that was that was it for the draft. And
so was this before like Mel Kiper Jr. was coming out with his books and stuff like that?
No, he was out there. But my parents wouldn't allow me to have cable TV or ESPN. Gotcha. So I had to go the route and get in the little book.
Okay.
And so, but I put these reports together, and I typed up my first, it was like a 70-page draft report back in 1992. And I remember having Desmond Howard with, the Heisman pose, on the front cover. And I sent it out to Charlie Casserly, who was the general manager of the Redskins at the time, basically asking him for an internship. And he wrote back and said, "Hey, you're still too young. Check back after your first year of college." Well, I was so into scouting and into football that my grade slipped. My dad gave me kind of the ultimatum, like, "Hey, it's either the military or college. What do you want to do with your life?" type of speech. Mm-hmm. And so I went into college for a year, kind of got into the social scene, dropped out, ended up at Allstate Insurance, 21 years old. Not the place you would think an NFL dream would start to come true, but it was for me, because I was telemarketing for insurance leads, and KFAN radio came on, the sports radio station up in Minnesota, and they said, "Hey, the first 32 callers call in now. You'll be on there representing an NFL team on the air." So I had 9 open phone lines, so I started dialing like a maniac, and they say, "Hey, congratulations, this is 1995. 1995, you're the second caller. You're going to represent the Jacksonville Jaguars, the expansion team. Bring a friend out to Winter Park with the Vikings headquarters, and you're going to, be on the air, and it'll be great. We'll provide lunch and all this. So I grabbed all my old scouting reports, took my best friend at the time. We went out to the Vikings headquarters, and I was scared to death of public speaking at the time. And the big microphone, like the one sitting in front of me now, they said, like the commissioner does, with the second pick in the 1995 draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select, and I leaned into the mic and I said, Tony Boselli, offensive tackle, USC, right? And out of the corner of my eye, there was Tony Dungy. And this before, Tony, became the Tony Dungy everybody knows. He was the defense coordinator of the Vikings at the time under Danny Green. And so I, raced up to him and showed him all my reports. And he was like, hey, this stuff is great. How do you feel about coming to my office next week? We can sit down. And like, I'll be there. So it was awesome. He pulled all his old scouting reports out from Blesto. He compared them to my scouting reports. He said, this stuff is pretty much right on target. He said, how, it just turned into be like a 6-month unpaid internship with Coach Dungy. He left for Tampa. I went back to the real world, selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. Again, I want everyone to get a hold of this because my last name begins not Lombardi, right? I went door to door selling vacuum cleaners, just selling cookbooks, went through a real rough time. Went through a big breakup at the time, and I was kind of like at a loss, and I found myself at 24 working at Bank of America Mortgage as a loan officer, and I'm like, what am I doing here? My dream is to be an NFL scout. It's better to go for it and try and not get it than to wonder always what if. So I got a little satellite dish, started recording all the games again. And actually it turned into be a 350-page self-published draft guide that you alluded to, Sunil, that I sent out 3 copies to every team in the NFL, one to every general manager, head coach, and director of player personnel, and packed it all up along with next month's rent payment. So it was kind of like wave the punter off the field. I mean, I put every dime I had into this project with no guarantees, and sent them off. And that's when the call came from the Jets.
Wow. That's amazing. And then, the rest is history. So how long were you an actual scout for the Jets?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. Beautiful. And